hope everybody can hear me. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike Turlow, Clinton County Administrator. As county governments are partnering with the Hudson Fulton Champlain Quadra Centennial Commission to commemorate the historic voyages and discoveries of Henry Hudson, Samuel D. Champlain, and Robert Fulton, I am pleased to welcome you on behalf of Clinton County to this community outreach meeting. Thank you for being here, especially with the damp weather. Of course, Clinton County will focus on Champlain's voyage of 1609 and reflect upon the historical significance of his arrival to our region. And I'm going to be brief. At this time, I'd like to call upon County Legislator, and Vice Chair of the Commission, Sween Paquette, who provide greater detail on the Commission's charge in tonight's program. Again, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Mike, and welcome to all. This is a great turnout. It's probably the best turnout I think Bart's had in the whole state. These are exciting times for us and for New York State, specifically our Champlain Valley that we all love so dearly. I became excited about this celebration when I found this book 20 years ago, the Centennial, 1909. I got really excited about it. We got to do something in 2009. I remember approaching Gary Douglas, our chamber, talking to different folks, and finally legislation was passed in 2002. Here we are at the commission. I want to welcome and thank our Executive Director, Barbara Fratiani, for being here this evening. Thank you, Barbara. You'll hear more from Barbara in a couple minutes. Also, thanks to Allison Lynch, who's a faithful member of our team here, who travels with Barbara. Also here this evening is another member of the commission, former Assemblyman Chris Orkoff, who was responsible for the legislation. Chris will address us later in the program with some moving words about 1609 and 1909 and New York State history. At this point, I'd like to invite Jack Stewart to welcome the mayor of Lethbridge. Jack?
I want to say thank you to each and every one of you that came here tonight. This is a very significant event for the Valley and for all of us. Our forefathers did it in 1909. It's up to us to do it now. And I feel a lot better tonight. I'm a little tired. It's been a long week. Finally bought a budget, so I'm out of the woods on that. The onslaught that will be here on the 26th of October over here, but I take that too. But the city of Leicester will survive, and the valley will survive. And I can't tell you how important it is, all of us, what you do in regards to this celebration. This is a pathway to the nation, and we are very fortunate to live here. And it's a golden opportunity for us to tell the world what we have. And I want to ask you to consider, I'm not going to bring it up now because you've got enough business to do tonight, but the city of Plattsburgh is working on a project that we would love to have your support and help us to develop and produce for our region, the valley, and the basin, a project that will be a lasting memory to the people that came here and settled here and will be a tourist attraction for the next century. So thank you all for coming to Plattsburgh, and I wish you the very best, and I know you're going to succeed because that's the way it is in New York. We do it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you for the use of this facility. I also want to thank Keith Turlow, who's over here, and everyone else who helped tonight with the podiums and tables and screens, Mary Pastime, my dear friend Jane West, who helped with this display. Please take time to look at the display materials from the 1909 celebration and 1959 date. Now, Barbara has asked me to have everyone introduce themselves. She'd like an idea of who's here tonight. So we've already met Mike and Barbara, and some of you have met her, you're going to meet her in a minute. Bill, want to start with yourself?
Bill Clinton, trustee with the Clinton County Historical Association.
Jim Bailey, Council of the City. Jim Ryan, Legislative Management Program.
SUNY Plattsburgh, but I'm also representing the American Association of Teachers and Education.
Ed Collins, interested citizen.
Mike Cooley, University citizen and CCHA trustee.
Jen Colbert, citizen. Jan Kuchar, historian for the town of Saranac.
Earl Kuchar, historian for the town of Dannemora.
Howard Lowe with the Technical Assistance Center at SUNY Plattsburgh and also Lakes to Lost Passage.
Gina Kennedy, director of Lakes to Lux Passage.
Michelle Powers, Champlain Shores Visitor Convention Bureau, also Plattsburgh North Country Chamber of Commerce. Linda Harwood, trustee on CCHA.
Roger Harwood, president of Lynn County Historical Association.
Paul Cloutier, Champlain Valley Transportation Museum Grant Administrator.
Grady Talby, Plattsburgh Rotary Club.
Citizen in Plattsburgh and Battle Plattsburgh Association member.
Pete Herbelow, City Clerk, Plattsburgh.
Jessica Babby, Empire State Development, also representing Randy Beach, who also serves on the Champlain Basin Program.
Hi, Maureen Carla from Wells Communications.
I'm Mary Everett, and we just opened up the Adirondack Kitchen Supply Store. If anybody needs anything, come see us. Please.
Very Russell, citizen and living history enthusiast.
John Kruger, County Board West Museum.
Christina Parker, chart coordinator and museum assistant Battle Plattsburgh City.
Bill Rivers, Mary Elizabeth Ross White.
Addie Shields, Clinton County historian.
John Atwood, New York State Police Shazy, and more importantly, I actually grandson.
Tom Hughes, Concord State Historic Site.
Kevin Dunlop, candidate for mayor of the city of Plattsburgh.
Did we get some people in that?
Colleen Hickey, Lake Champlain Basin Program.
Allison Lynch, New York State Forest and Board Commissions.
Thank you. Calvin?
And Calvin.
And Calvin. Oh, and Calvin, yes. He's faithful. He's doing it.
Calvin Castine from Hometown Cable and the Champlain Community Park, and a good friend of Addie.
I guess it's a connection to Addie. It is my pleasure tonight to introduce Barbara Fratiani, who's Executive Director of the Hudson Fulton Champlain Quadra Centennial Commission, and I will never say that again, I say Quad Commission. Barbara has been our Executive Director for 1 year. As part of the legislation that created this commission, one of the requirements was that there be community outreach programs. I think they're called roundtables in the legislation. Barbara has been holding these programs, I think, in about 13 counties. She's got about 6 or 7 more to go. We appreciate her dedication and her energy. This is a big area. She is from northern Lake Champlain all the way to Manhattan. So Barbara, it's all yours.
Yes, you'll be happy to know that I drove up basically 35 miles north of Manhattan. I reside in Westchester County. So it was a beautiful 5-hour drive today. Magnificent scenery along the Adirondack and the Thruway. But I am so delighted, and I think Celine put it correctly. This has got to be the largest crowd that we have ever had in the, I think we did that 9 counties so far, and this is really astounding, and just a great cross-section of representation. So first I'd like to thank Mike Servo for all that you have done in organizing this meeting and setting it up, and together with Celine, our vice chair, who has helped and organized lists and calling people, so your staff and Celine and her staff, thank you so much for getting this going. This is the northernmost county in New York that we will be focusing on for our roundtables. And it's just a great feeling to see you here. And it's what an exciting time. You know, the 400th anniversary is something that comes around, well, I just say not this celebration, this type of celebration is celebrated in New York State 100 years. So you can imagine how significant it is for all of us, because we are not going to be around for the next one, are we? Unless there's somebody here who can tell me they will be. But with medical history and medical research the way it's going, I am sure that when they reach the celebration of 500 years, there will be somebody who says, I remember the 2009. So this is really our time, and all of you will be a part of the history. And many of you probably will be recorded if we are lucky enough to have the same type of official records that they had in 1909. The two official volumes that Celine is referring to for the Hudson-Fulton Commission, as well as the Champlain Commission. So you have 4 volumes which are full of details of everything that went on in 1909. So, and I want to tell you how important the role of the local community is in the local county. As Mike has mentioned to you, the commission is asking to partner with each county in this corridor. It's so huge an area. And we feel the best way to get this celebration underway is that each county form a Centennial committee. Now, under that committee, we're asking each local town and each local city or village to form its own Centennial committee. You plan events for your community. Focus on what is important in your town, your village, in your area. Is there an historic monument? Is there an historic tablet? Is there a story that you want the world to know about? That's what you plan your events around. And I know that everyone has something special that they celebrate, whether it's annually or maybe it's a special anniversary within your community. We're not asking, the commission is not asking you to do something extraordinary or something brand new. We want you to be you. We want you to tell the world, to tell us why it is so important that people know about Clinton County and all of the local communities within it. And we know that you can do this because you have demonstrated your abilities for outstanding events in the past. And so the commission really knows and will depend on Clinton County to put together one of the most spectacular events of this century. And Clinton County has a rich military history from the French and the Indian War, the American Revolutionary War of 1812, and has hosted a military presence almost continuously until very recently with the closing of the air base. Clinton County was the first county to be created in northern New York, and control of Lake Champlain was heavily contested for centuries among the French, English, and Native Americans. All struggled to control the Champlain Valley. Clinton County played a vital role in both the Battle of Balfour in 1776 and the Battle of Plattsburgh in 1814. The outcome of these two conflicts was instrumental in securing our nation's independence from Great Britain. And here are some historic notes that you'd be interested to know. I'm sure many of you do. But if you're new to the area, sometimes you don't get a chance to go back and really look. Plattsburgh, which became a city in 1902, was long a favorite place by several of our nation's presidents. William McKinley had used Hotel Champlain as his summer White House for 2 seasons, in 1897 and 1899. During these occasions, many members of his cabinet routinely visited and conducted business here in Plattsburgh. 2 presidents before McKinley also visited Plattsburgh. Other presidents were of Cleveland who came here to meet with Smith Lee, the most influential local citizen of that time. Going back to 1869 to 1877, you'll be interested to know that Ulysses S. Grant had been stationed at the Plattsburgh Barracks early in his career and returned here for a visit while he was president. And then we have Teddy Roosevelt, who succeeded McKinley after his assassination. He also visited Plattsburgh before becoming president, and he returned here again during a campaign stop by train in 1898. So that's really pretty fascinating. I myself was impressed to learn all about the presidents that came to Clinton County and to Plattsburgh. Now let's go back and begin our journey that happened almost 400 years ago. July of 1609. And in the 17th century, part of the outward thrust of the monarchies in Europe was to explore new territories for trade, commerce, and expansion of the empires in the New World. French explorer and navigator Centennial de Champlain explored much of the North Atlantic coast and the St. Lawrence River. He was very likely the first white man to set foot upon the territory of both the state of New York and the state of Vermont. He discovered and founded the city of Quebec in 1608, thus earning the name Father of New France. Centennial de Champlain, in July of 1609, accompanied by Native Americans, entered for the first time into the majestic lake that now bears his name. Lake Champlain, along with the Hudson River, forms a natural highway from St. Lawrence River to the Atlantic Ocean. In 1609, the Dutch East India Company hired Englishman Henry Hudson to find a northeast water route to Asia to shorten the voyage around the Cape of Good Hope. He was provided with an 80-foot ship called a Half Moon. He had 20 sailors, half were Dutch and half were British, and nobody talked to each other. He left Amsterdam towards Norway, and they ran into some choppy waters, and Hudson himself had this vision, he had this dream that he was going to discover a better route. He wanted to go northwest. So in defiance of his contract, and with the help of some bad weather, he started to head west. He first landed on the coast of Maine and then continued south to the Chesapeake and Delaware Bays. He then sailed north to the mouth of the Hudson River. He traveled as far north of what he called the River of Mountains to Albany before turning around. While he was in Albany, he sent out some of his crew in a small boat to go farther north to do soundings to see if he could really find that northwestern China. They traveled as far north to Waterford, and then made a voyage back down the Hudson River. In August of 1807, we had some historical significance. Robert Fulton, who was born in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, became interested in steamboats at age 12. He was also an artist and went to England to study painting. While there, he proposed plans for steam vessels to both the U.S. and British government. He also worked on canals. During his stay in France, he met French engineers and helped create the first submarine, Nautilus, which was commissioned by Napoleon. Fulton also met Robert Livingston in France, who was then the ambassador, and they conspired to build a steamboat. The steam engine was built in England to Fulton's specifications and delivered to New York, where the steamboat Clermont was built. The Clermont sailed from New York City to Albany in 32 hours, initiating more than a century of commercial steam, linking the Hudson with the interior of the United States and the trading centers of Europe. The steamboat contributed to making the world smaller by improved speed in travel and communication. And now when I say improved speed, you may be interested to know that Fulton traveled at a speed of 5 miles per hour at that time. That's why it took 32 hours to go from New York to Albany. And 5 miles per hour is like being on a sailboat today in winds of between 10 and 15 knots. But his invention led to military naval ships and to, of course, the great ocean liners that we are familiar with today. Hudson, Champlain, and Fulton's voyages set the stage for a series of events which transformed our region and the world. It established a vital north-south corridor at the epicenter of global commerce, transportation, politics, and ideas. It laid the groundwork for the Dutch settlement of the Hudson Valley, the French settlement of the Champlain Valley, and thus the two great nations, the U.S. and Canada. It ushered in a new era of innovation and technology which distinguishes the Northeast to this day. Today, the Hudson River Valley is called Tech Valley and has received national and international attention for the explosion of technology-based industries all along the length of the river and to and including Canada. And you know that, in fact, is a very close partner of New York State in economic development and technology. It engendered traditions of freedom and dignity. The river has been the theater of action during colonial and revolutionary warfare. It has inspired artists of the region's vast natural and cultural resources. The spiritual value of the American landscape of the Hudson River and Lake Champlain, its enchanting sceneries and romantic memories has inspired so many artists, and including what we now know to be the Hudson River School of Landscape Art. It established water routes in the interior of America and its first frontier. The opening of the Erie Canal in 1825 led to rapid building of railroads along either shore of the Hudson. And this development led to huge manufacturing enterprise, and we also see a picture of the Champlain Canal. This did a lot of inspired, not only and encouraged, but economic development, and that's how we were able to get products from the northeast, from the northwest, and the midwest down to different ports in New York City. And it established national precedents in environmental conservation. In 1909, the first environmental movement of this country was the formation of the Palisades Interstate Park Commission. Now we come to the 1909 Hudson Fulton celebration. And as I said before, in 1909 they had two commissions, and unlike today where we combined all three regions. The 300th anniversary was planned to be a huge, spectacular international event, and the Hudson River was used as a stage for the 15-day celebration. The electric light, discovered just 18 years earlier, inspired a colossal amount of lights used throughout the city and along the Hudson River. Searchlights and 1.5 million light bulbs were used to create unprecedented civic illuminations for monuments, buildings, and bridges. There was a monster naval parade of U.S. and foreign warships, replicas of the Half Moon and the Claremont, which stretched for 10 miles up the river. There were newfangled air races between the Wright brothers flyer and their arch rival Glenn Curtis's 1908 June Bug. Wilbur Wright made a 20-minute flight up the Hudson River from Governor's Island to Grand Street and back in 33 minutes. He lashed a canoe to the bottom of the airplane in case of emergency landing in the water. More than 1 million New Yorkers witnessed the flight. Does anybody know, or does anybody remember, how high do you think that Wilbur Wright was flying? What was his altitude in 1909? And can you also tell me what the speed of the aircraft was? Anybody? Well, I'll share that with you. His altitude was 200 feet, and he flew at 35 miles per hour. Again, I think it's just incredible to see these early inventions and where we have come since 1909. Communities all along the Hudson River, all the way to Albany, celebrated Hudson and Fulton's historic ordinances. And here's some of the photographs from the 1909 celebration. Here's some horse-drawn floats in Central Park West. The parade of battleships illuminated at night. The Ryan Scintillator. This was a very clever invention. It had a lot of prisms and mirrors and lights that simulated daylight. And this was done in a very dark evening. As we said before, electric lights were not very common during the 1909, but this was done up on Riverside Drive, and it was really a spectacular lighting show. And here's the official landing in New York City at 110th Street, the launching of the Claremont in New York Harbor. The Half Moon collides with the Claremont, and that was not a planned event. I guess we could say perhaps they didn't have harbor masters at that time. And here's one of the historical parades coming through the Court of Honor. And again, some fireworks and illuminations. You know, it's interesting to know, I mean, everybody had fireworks and everybody had lights. in those days. Here we come now to the Champlain Tercentenary of 1909. The Lake Champlain Tercentenary Commissions of New York and Vermont hosted a celebration commemorating the discovery of Lake Champlain. A full week of festive events in all of the local communities surrounding the lake included patriotic, military, and civic exercises, as well as water pageants, literary exercises, the drama of Hiawatha, and lots of fireworks. One day of the week in each of the cities were activities of the many French societies. President, and who's going to name the president now? Who was the president in 1909? Please don't you say it if you know it. And Celine knows it, and I'm starring. Anybody? Taft. Very good. Okay, President Taft and New York Governor Charles Hughes and Vermont Governor, let me see, everybody knows who the governor was in 1909, I was right in June. And I don't mean to. Okay, it's Governor Crowley. They visited many of the cities, such as Plattsburgh and Burlington, to join in with the local celebrations. Now I come to a very interesting point. I'm going to just show you a few of the slides of the 1909 celebration, and then turn it over to former Assemblyman and now Commissioner of Parole for New York State, Bruce Quadra. But I wanted to show you, here's President Taft in Plattsburgh. And here's what Plattsburgh looked like in 1909. Can you imagine that? I mean, I just find it amazing that everybody, everywhere, as the mayor said before, turned out for this celebration. And here's a military parade in Plattsburgh. Look how long, I mean, look how it stretches up into the rear. Just quite impressive. And here's the Native American pageants at Isle Lamont in Vermont. Oh, is it Allison, did I step? I think I'm going to step on it. Sorry about that. And these were the President Taft was in, I think we missed him. Okay, wait a minute, there's a little trouble here. These are the official guest badges from the 1909. If you step on this wire, it throws things out of kilter, so sorry about that. Hopefully it'll stand. Okay. These were some more pictures of parade floats in Plattsburgh. And here's the steamboat Ticonderoga unloading guests at Crown Point. Again, just so many visitors. And now, Chris, I would like you to come up, and I know that you have something very significant to add this time.
Well, this is really called a commercial break. Barbara, we'll pick up Barbara's narrative in a minute, but at this point, we thought it would be appropriate to get all of us thinking. Let's go back to, go back in your mind, just all the photographs. They made impressions. Imagine the day that the President of the United States was here. The road was just as muddy as it is tonight. It was very rainy that week. They had their hands full. And as we planned this celebration for 2009, we want to link what we can remember and what we have left to us from 1909. Because once again, as we did 100 years ago, New York joins Vermont and Quebec in celebrating this time the 400th anniversary of the discovery of Lake Champlain by Europeans. And the incorporating of Lake Champlain, the Adirondacks, the Green Mountains, and the valley lying between into the domain of what we now call Western civilization. What is different from 1909, as Barbara mentioned before, is that New York will celebrate 1609 this time in its broadest perspective, with both Champlain and Henry Hudson, and the way their discoveries, only a few weeks apart, and less than 100 miles apart, helped make New York the diverse and then unique center of world trade that it is today. Here in the north, our celebrations will focus on the man, the leader of the French explorations, who opened up the St. Lawrence Valley, who opened up the Champlain Valley, who founded the province of New France, who brought the influence of the Catholic Church and the Judeo-Christian tradition in general, the culture, the literature, the art, the architecture, and the values of Europe. This was a watershed event, the discovery of the Champlain-Hudson corridor. Interestingly, for our imagination, the fact that the two explorers didn't know the other was there doesn't prevent us from completing the linkage in our celebration. And it's appropriate that we do. Because today, we realize that Champlain, and Hudson also, both typify the age of exploration and at the same time uniquely contributed to it. Today we understand this as a meeting of cultures, and we correctly mark the exchange of cultural values back and forth between the original people who immigrated here thousands of years before and the Europeans who, whatever was true, believed that they had discovered a new world. And today we understand that the very allure of the new world in the courts and streets and farms of Europe was in part derived from the fact that there were already people here. And the imagination that that inspired, and the hope that it inspired in people in Europe who had been downtrodden for many, many centuries. Yet our task, both in the larger interstate celebration and in each of our local celebrations, is to mark the unique spirit and contributions of Champlain himself as a symbol of all those who came here, met here, fought here, and grew here, building a place called New York and a place called Vermont, adjacent to a place called Quebec. President William Howard Taft led the celebrations 100 years ago, and his words, every single one of them, along with every single word uttered by every single speaker at every single event, are carefully recorded in this book. Whoever recorded them was so careful that they even recorded applause, loud laughter, polite laughter. It's all there. And if you have a chance to read even one of these accounts, and I hope you will, in planning your local celebrations, just that little detail gives you some flavor of the fact that it was people who were doing these celebrations, and it was people who had these ideas and expressed them to one another. And some of them were humorous. To put things into perspective, finally, and give us some idea of how big a deal it was 100 years ago, and how big a deal it very well may be again, it's useful to begin by just looking at the book again, the size and the weight and the interesting thoughts and concepts. In a series of events led by the President, this is 4 days, the President and the Vice President, both governors, all 4 United States senators, all the representatives in Congress, the state senators, the state reps, the state assembly members, ambassadors, commission members from both sides, and of course the local leaders. And crowds of celebrating citizens without whom the speeches would have meant nothing. The sober thoughts are here, so are the bad jokes, all taken down. But among the words forgotten, except in this book, are the memorable words that serve to guide us still today, and I expect will guide each and every one of us in this room in honoring, understanding, and commemorating Champlain. So let me conclude by setting the stage for us in the words, and on behalf of the long deceased president, the words he spoke here on this spot nearly 100 years ago. President Taft was, I should preface this by saying, was not unfamiliar with the North Country. He had spent many, many years in his youth and as an adult in Canada on a lake. I believe it was Lake Huron, but I'm not 100% sure. But he was a sailor as well. He knew the water, and he knew the wilds of the north. So when he talked about Champlain, the intrepid sailor, and Champlain's little boats that we can see on the postage stamp, he knew what he was talking about. Champlain, said the president, was a man whom all nations can honor. He is not a man with respect to whose history you have to pass over something in silence. All his life would bear the closest examination. Whatever. And he brings out in the strongest ways those wonderful qualities of the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries by Spaniard, Englishman, Frenchman, Portuguese, who braved those dreadful terrors of the sea, circumnavigated the globe in little cockle shells, and carried the standard of their civilization into the farthest forests and into the dangers of the most distant tropics. I am a good sailor. I do not mind the waves at sea, but I should think those that did mind them would not believe the story of a Magellan or a Cortez or a Champlain, who came over in things that seem no larger than skiffs today across the vast Atlantic. He goes on to say that this valley, in the 300, at that time, years since it was discovered by Champlain, has furnished almost as much of a battleground here in North America as Belgium in Europe. And one does not have to seek far for the reason. If you will read the account given by Benedict Arnold of his attempt to reach Quebec through the wilds of Maine, you will understand why everyone else went this way. By Lake Champlain. The truth is, by the way, it says laughter in here. You're getting with the celebration. The truth is, it was the only passage right. And as the St. Lawrence on one hand and the Atlantic on the other hand were both great places for settlement, this, linked with the Hudson, was the only passage between them, and therefore was a natural place for the cultures to continue to meet and propagate and flourish, and for the battles that were fought there. So, as we celebrate in a few years, and as we begin today to think about how we're going to do it, it is well to remember that the President of the United States, 100 years ago, spoke words like that at every stop. In his role as the leader of the celebrations, understanding what a celebration is for, and indeed what this celebration was about, and that for 4 days, all of those figures, all of those individuals I mentioned before, were united in one place, one valley, with one common purpose, and of one mind, that it was important, this place that we call home. And now as I turn it back to Barbara for the rest of the presentation, I hope we all take inspiration from what was done 100 years ago and realize that we have a tremendous opportunity to show the world not only why they came here so long ago, but what we, working together, have done with what they left us. Thank you.
And while we're on the topic of famous speeches, I because it complements what President Taft said. And this was from Governor Hughes. And again, it's to point out what Chris is telling you, how important the celebration should be to all of us, and how we should continue the history and our natural and our heritage of these events. And Governor Hughes at one of the ceremonies said, "This is a celebration in which the daring of the explorer and the patient work of the inventor are alike commemorated, both being the most significant of all in what they typify, connected with the progress of humanity. If we were unworthy of our ancestors, this would be a celebration simply of wealth and material gain. For here perhaps as nowhere else in the world are signs of the progress of man in making nature contribute to his happiness and in utilizing the increasing facilities for the interchange of the products of industry. But it is because we are worthy of our ancestors and cherish the treasure which they have committed to our trust that we turn aside from the indications of material gain, much as deprives them, to pay our sincere tribute of respect to their sacrifice, their courage, loyalty, and intense love of freedom." And now we come to the 1959 350th Hudson Champlain anniversary celebration. And this was a New York State celebration which included all of the counties. It just wasn't the Champlain-Hudson corridor. This was created by legislation to observe the anniversaries of historic events of statewide significance which has taken place in our state. Princess Beatrix of the Netherlands attended celebrations from New York City and throughout the Hudson Valley. The 350th anniversary of Samuel de Champlain's expedition to Lake Champlain drew visitors to fairs, festivals, parades, and pageants. Every county in New York State celebrated this in some historic way. Governor Nelson Rockefeller and the state legislature invited Princess Beatrix to be here to participate in this celebration. Two legacy projects mark the 350th anniversary. The Lawrence Seaway and Power Plant were dedicated by the President of the United States and the Queen of Great Britain, and the opening of the historic site at Portland Manor in Croton on the Hudson. I don't want to miss the opportunity to mention how wonderful this collection that Celine has provided, which shows so many photographic articles from both the 1909 and the 1959 here in Lake Champlain. Please, after the presentation, make sure that you stop by and see it. And this, again, we're going to go back to some of the parades. This was in State Street in Albany in 1959. Here's Princess Beatrix in Kingston. Here's Miss Henry Hudson on a float, and that's Mrs. Barney Trotter, I think is her name. She's the only woman on the commission at that time. Here is a 1959 road sign being unveiled by Senator Hatfield, who was president of the commission for the 350th. And here's Governor Rockefeller unveiling a Henry Hudson mural. And here's a replica of the 1909 Glenn Curtis flight. And now we come to 2002, when Governor Pataki signed the Hudson-Fulton-Champlain Quadra Centennial Act. By passing this legislation, the state acknowledges the importance of 1909 to all. The state recognizes that the tradition, the cultural significance of this historic event has to continue. This, of course, follows a tradition and historic markers set in 1909 when two separate commissions were created by state and federal legislation. You'll be interested to know that federal legislation has been introduced in May of this year, and we're hoping that by the end of the year, all the bills will be signed and signed into law to create what will be the Hudson-Fulton Commission and the Champlain Commission. There will be two federal commissions who will work and coordinate with the New York State Hudson-Fulton Champlain Commission. Governor Pataki said at the sign that these upcoming celebrations will energize communities all along the Hudson River and Lake Champlain, while attracting thousands of new visitors from across the nation to New York. This important new commission will play a key role in helping us commemorate and honor the legacies of Hudson, Fulton, Champlain, and their historic voyages. Now, the present commission, we have come up with our strategic plan, and our mission is to engage the public in civic, educational, environmental, cultural, and heritage organizations in creating Explore NY 400 events, and you can see it ties in with the logo. We want to support development of related plans and activities, including creation of infrastructure benefiting future generations. And these are some of the legacy projects that we would like to see continue. These were two from the 1909, the Henry Hudson Bridge and the Champlain statue. Monument, I should say. Sorry. We also want to focus attention on history, culture, and natural resources of our national treasures. We want to tell the New York 400 story to the corridor, the state, the nation, and the world. Stimulate tourism and economic development. Develop educational curriculum. Support efforts to make the Hudson swimmable by 2009. To enhance cultural, historical, recreational, educational, and natural resources of New York State. To involve international participants, which we have. We are working with the Henry Hudson 400, a non-for-profit from Amsterdam, and they are going to be sponsoring a transatlantic voyage upon this, they put the stop Amsterdam. And the exciting thing about it is that they are going to take 20 students, 10 from New York City, and 10 students from throughout New York State to be on that. They will leave from Amsterdam and come to New York in September of 2009. We want to foster learning and appreciation of Native American cultures. And we want to leave a legacy of improvements for the environment, historic resources, and community waterfronts. Now, we have a 400 legacy committee, and Jim Braggett from Vermont is on that committee, and the mission of that committee is to work in all of the regions to follow the Opportunity for Action Plan that was established by Lake Champlain, and the Hudson River Estuary Program Management Plan, and the New York, New Jersey Harbor Management Plan, to find what is most important to each region. What do we need to concentrate on? In Lake Champlain is to reduce the phosphorus. In the Hudson River is another objective that they have. This committee will focus on what will ultimately be legacy projects that we will remember 2009 for. What we have done so far, we created the New York 400 identity. We've launched our website, and if you don't know it, it's www.exploreny400. We established a toll-free telephone number, which is up on the board, and it actually, I think it translates to 432-2009. We have applied for a U.S. Service commemorative stamp with the Vermont, and we have introduced legislation for a commemorative license plate. The plan for 2009 is to have a kickoff celebration July 4th throughout the corridor and through the Hudson Valley and Lake Champlain region. And then in August, we're going to have special events in Albany, and we're hoping that we have some vessels come down from Lake Champlain through the canal to to rendezvous in Albany to show that there is this connection, that how the water really connects us all, and that would be a really significant event. And then we're going to have many, many Hudson River Valley events, as they did in 1909. And then the grand finale to be anywhere between September and October 4th. And these dates are not fixed yet, so that there is still opportunity to adjust them. We may shorten the period and end everything in September. But that is the overall theme that we are trying to work with. We are looking for corporate sponsors, major institutions to organize activities, national partners, and endorsements. And we hope that everybody in this room will run back to their communities and become very excited and form those committees that we talked about before. And you can do this. How can you participate? By forming that Quadra Centennial Committee, by starting to plan your community events, to inspire and educate people in your community about our heritage, to encourage tourism, to enhance the appreciation of the historic corridor, to strengthen connections between the Champlain Valley and the Hudson Valley in New York City, and develop legacy projects for future generations. You can become an Explore NY 400 community. And how to do that? We have an Explore NY 400 community draft or resolution that you can take back to your local community. And by doing so, you can then use our logo, you can get links to the website, and every event that you will put together will be publicized on our website. There will be, one master calendar of events in 2009, and you can also have the opportunity by establishing your own link that people can click on Clinton County or any of the towns within Clinton County to know what is going on in your community. And we also have a grant program that all you should know about. All the state agencies do grants, especially in 2006, we created special language that will give extra credit to a municipality or not-for-profit that is planning a project related to 2009. So if we have, in April of 2007, there's another series and round of state grants, and they generally, it's held by Office of Parks and Recreation, Historic Preservation, Department of Environmental Conservation, Department of State, and through DOT, the Department of Transportation, they have enhancement grants. So I hope that all of you will look out for that announcement to come through in the early part of next year. And actually, we're planning to have a workshop prior to make sure that you can take advantage of some of that state money. And that would conclude our presentation. And now I'd like to open it up to the audience to answer some of the questions that you may have. And as we're going through that, it will certainly, I'm sure, trigger other committees and work that the commission is presently doing. So thank you for being here, for taking time, you work all day. It's a long day for all of you, and it's a rainy evening, and I really appreciate that you have come here. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I was wondering, we're getting ready to celebrate 2009, but it seems to me that someone like Champlain is a bigger hero north of the border up in Canada. And I know that the Canadians are getting ready to do a giant celebration in 2008. And I was wondering to what extent this commission is going to communicate or coordinate with what's going on north of the border.
Yeah, so the plans are that we're going to work with Quebec, and there'll be a sort of handoff at the end of 2008 when they conclude their 400th celebration and have the governors and the dignitaries have a celebration with New York and Vermont. And so they, of course,
We have already begun our relationship with Quebec. One of the things I wanted to mention is we've developed some marvelous partnerships in Champlain Valley. lake unites us, does not divide us. So we're very close to the Vermont and a lot of our signatures, and we're really together in this. The federal commission that Barbara talked about will be the Hudson Fulton Commission and the Champlain Commission. Well, the Champlain Commission was both New York and Vermont. So I want to emphasize that partnership. The other partnership is Quebec. We've made some visits to Quebec. They have visited with us. I think Vermont's a little ahead of us there in some of their relationships with Quebec. But Quebec is a huge world-class celebration plan for 2000. They have a $100 million budget. It's huge. They're having world-class events, but they have said that they're going to save some money on that budget to do something with us in the spring of 2009. I hate to say pass the baton because someone thought we were actually going to pass the baton and fill the torch or something and stuff like that. And we've had discussions with the Richelieu region and with Vermont to have an event to open up our celebration. Our third partner is SUNY. SUNY under Chancellor King and now Chancellor Ryan is committed to working. So Sylvie, you're be interested in knowing that. Because SUNY has campuses from the northern part of the lake all the way to Manhattan. And they have committed to resources, personnel resources. And that's part of having an education committee going. And there is somebody who is representing the higher ed from National Department.
Do you want to add anything to that?
Can we see the cover pretty well?
I would like to know to what extent this partnership building process has involved the French embassy or municipalities like Champlain and Rouage, which are co-owners of
The chair of the Vermont Lake Champlain Quadra Centennial Commission has been meeting with the French consulate of Boston and also has visited with the Minister of Culture and Tourism in France. Has visited and they are working together to develop an MOU as we speak. They're drafting an MOU to solidify how that relationship will work for 2009. Rest assured that France is a major component for this quadricentennial. We've come to learn that 6 flights a day in Montreal Airport from Paris, and we're working with Celine to ensure that we have a program scope that will bring in an international audience, not just from Quebec and Canada, but from France and the Netherlands.
Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you all so much, and I hope, again, it's very important, the words of Celine and Mike Sherlock and Chris Orthoff, it's important that we begin the work. We have just a little over 2 years, so I hope that this can be considered as a kickoff and certainly an inspiration and call to action on those committees and to start creating those partnerships and alliances within your communities to create that committee, to start thinking about what you would like to do in 2009. And you can call Celine or Chris or Jim or myself anytime you need any help, anything to be answered. We're here to work very closely with you and to be really close partners. Again, thanks so much. Yes.
And one thing, we're all kind of fired up by this, but I'm remembering some other things in the past. I just want to emphasize, especially to the local leaders, it isn't going to be necessary, although we're not discouraging, it's not necessary to have an entirely new event for this thing. For example, you have a parade on Labor Day. Ceremony Lake Carnival. Everybody has some regular event, Jay-Z Homemade. If nothing else, all you really have to think about is taking the events that you already have, that your community already spends hours and hours of work on, and just tie that in for that year to the that was the general theme. So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, how are we going to create something new when we're already, not necessary. Think outside the box and we'll do some really good things.
That's so true, Brian. We just get out and just Quadra Centennial, that's all. Same thing with the Quadra Centennial banner or logo or umbrella, call it what you wish, but it's so true what Chris is saying. This, like I said, before, just focus on what you do